Amid the dust-covered archives of American automotive history, there is a name that lingers like a ghost. A car faster than a Jaguar, smoother than a Cadillac, and luxurious enough that only Hollywood stars dared to sign its invoice. It possessed everything needed to become a legend, except for one mischievous twist of fate. It never should have been born. Because behind that perfection lay a cruel paradox. Every time a car rolled out of the factory, the company quietly burned through $1,000. Not because it failed to sell. In fact, the more it sold, the faster the company plunged toward the abyss. A death sentence had been written the moment the first line touched the drawing board. And who was the man behind this most stylish financial suicide of the 1950s? Not a Detroit engineer, not an indie racer, but a cheap TV salesman who liked wearing red underwear and shouting into the camera. Someone who seemed fit only for low-budget commercials, yet ended up creating the most extravagant car in America. Is this naive passion or a grave miscalculation? Let's turn back time to find the answer. To understand why the Muntz Jet exists, we have to return to the American West in the late 1940s, where small machine shops and craftsmen were still the true heartbeat of speed. In that setting, Frank Curtis emerged as a master of metal, an artisan who lived by the sound of hammers striking steel and engines roaring on the Indy 500 practice grounds. He was not a businessman, not a marketer, not a man of commercial philosophy. For Curtis, a car was a work of art, and speed was the language. From that philosophy, in 1949, he created the Curtis Sport Car, KSC, something many historians later described as the predecessor of the post-war American sports car. KSC was a two-seat roadster built on pure racing principles, lightweight construction, honest steering feedback, and just enough power for the driver to feel every contour of the road. The body was made of hand-formed aluminum sheets, the kind of material only professional racing teams dared to use at the time. Its tubular frame was rigid and welded by hand with the precision of a craftsman who had lived his whole life in a workshop. The heart of the KSC was the Ford flathead V8 engine, not the strongest, but extremely reliable and easy to tune. When paired with the lightweight aluminum body, the KSC became a weapon that allowed the driver to feel every vibration, every delicate slide of the tires through a corner. It had no radio, no air conditioning, no indulgence of any kind. Only metal, sound, and speed. The essence of a machine for those who wanted to hear the road speak. But that purity became its fatal flaw. The American market of 1950 was changing. People wanted a car not just fast, but also luxurious, comfortable, and capable of making the neighbors turn their heads. Curtis understood speed, but he did not understand the market. So few KSCs were sold that he could not sustain production. He needed an investor, but he never expected that investor to be Earl Muntz. In 1950, Muntz came to see a KSC with the intention of buying it as a gift for his girlfriend. But standing before that small roadster, he saw more than a present. He saw potential to create a new kind of American luxury car, one as powerful as a race car, yet as smooth as a Cadillac and as bold as Hollywood. However, in Muntz's vision, the car needed to be bigger, longer, more expensive, and loud enough to announce that it belonged to the elite. And so he decided to spend $200,000, an unimaginable figure at the time, to buy the entire design, tooling, and production facility from Curtis in Glendale, California. It was not just a business deal. It was the moment a raw diamond was about to be cut and polished in a way only an eccentric like Muntz would dare imagine. From here, the Muntz Car Company was officially born. And his first task was to change the structure of the car. The KSC, with its 100-inch wheelbase, was ideal for sharp cornering, but far too small to carry the luxurious presence Muntz wanted. So he ordered it stretched by an additional 13 inches, opening space for a rear seat and transforming the two-seat roadster into a four-seat convertible. The engineers warned that this would reduce agility and break the sporty balance it originally had. But Muntz simply shrugged. To him, customers didn't buy the precision of a steering angle. They bought the attitude of stepping out of the car under flashing lights. The extended body made the aluminum structure of the KSC increasingly impractical. Aluminum was too expensive, too difficult to shape, and required too many labor hours. So Muntz switched entirely to pressed steel, which was easier to weld and better suited for low-volume production. But the price of that decision was a weight increase to nearly 4,000 pounds, pushing the car from the spirit of a racer into the silhouette of a Cadillac-sized luxury symbol. In Muntz's eyes, that was exactly the form Hollywood expected. Though heavier, the car was compensated by a far more powerful heart. Muntz immediately removed the KSC's Ford Flathead V8. He wanted something stronger, something that growled with authority. Thus, the Cadillac 331 V8 was placed into the engine bay of the first jets, delivering power that surprised even seasoned test drivers. When Cadillac supply became difficult, he switched to the Lincoln 337 side-valve V8. Though lower in horsepower, its smoothness and durability allowed the car to operate in the refined manner Muntz envisioned, a muscular beast in a tailored suit. At the customer's preference, the car could use a Hydra-matic automatic transmission or a 3-speed Borg-Warner manual. Whichever they chose, the Muntz Jet carried a uniquely paradoxical character, heavy yet agile, bulky yet commanding. On long, straight stretches in California, period journalists recorded the Jet reaching speeds exceeding the Jaguar XK120, something few believed possible when looking at its size and weight. But what made the Muntz Jet an icon wasn't the engine or the chassis, it was the interior, a place where Muntz invested more care than any Detroit engineer of that era. The dashboard was padded for safety. The steering wheel used a flexible column to reduce injury during collisions. The control knobs were recessed into the surface to prevent harm in an impact, a series of ideas years ahead of Detroit. And then came the details only Muntz would dream up. The interior could be trimmed in genuine alligator leather, a declaration for those who wanted to flaunt luxury in pure California style. The icebox integrated into the rear armrest functioned like a miniature bar, perfect for film stars leaving the studio at midnight and wanting a drink before driving down the coast to Malibu. It wasn't a technical feature, it was a lifestyle packaged inside a car. When the Muntzification process was complete, Frank Curtis's lightweight KSC had almost disappeared. In its place stood the Muntz Jet, a heavyweight machine, bold and unapologetically theatrical. It was no longer a race car. It was a rolling performance, a straightforward declaration that sometimes luxury isn't measured by the speed you reach, but by the feeling you create when you pull up to a party in Beverly Hills. But when the flashlights faded and the parties ended, Earl Muntz quickly realized the limits of the land he was standing on. California had sunshine, had Hollywood, had wealthy customers, but it lacked one crucial thing: a supply chain. Every component, big or small, had to be shipped from Detroit to the West Coast, causing costs to soar and delivery times to become a constant frustration. That was the moment Muntz made the biggest strategic decision of his car-building career: to move the entire operation to Evanston, Illinois, closer to Detroit, closer to the source of parts, and closer to the business reality he was forced to face. Moving the factory didn't just change geography, it changed the very appearance of the jet. Engineers in Illinois continued to stretch the car by a few more inches, giving it a longer and smoother silhouette that matched the emerging aesthetics of the early 1950s. The fenders, which had been assembled in separate pieces in California, were now made as a single unit, creating a sense of continuity and solidity in the design. And most importantly, Muntz applied a material almost no one dared to use in a production car at the time: fiberglass. The Jet's removable fiberglass hardtop became one of the earliest uses of this material in American automobiles, signaling a new direction for an industry still struggling with steel and aluminum. Refining the design was only part of the expansion strategy. Muntz understood that the Jet could not compete with Detroit through technical advertising, so he used Hollywood's familiar social leverage. Stars like Mickey Rooney, Clark Gable, and Clara Bow appeared with the Jet not because of contracts, but because they were drawn to its eccentricity and boldness. Muntz didn't need banners or brochures. He only needed to show up at a glamorous party, laugh loudly, and place the Jet's keys into the hands of a celebrity. From that moment, the car spoke for him. Creating a luxury object is one thing. Turning it into an icon is another. In California, and later in Illinois, Muntz managed to do both. The Jet was not a car for everyone. It was a car for people who wanted to prove they didn't live by ordinary rules. It wasn't just expensive. It was expensive in a way that challenged the very logic of business. But even though the Muntz Jets carried the appearance of confidence and extravagance, the reality inside the factory was a simmering storm that Earl Muntz could never escape. Each jet was built by the hands of craftsmen, every sheet of steel hammered by hand, every weld adjusted by eye, every stitch of the interior sewn as if tailoring a bespoke suit. The Jet was not an industrial product. It was a handcrafted object wearing the disguise of an automobile. But that very nature became its financial sentence. The labor hours required for a single jet were so high that no major automaker dared to match them, and material costs continued to rise after each redesign from California to Illinois. While Cadillac optimized production to build thousands of cars each week, Muntz Car Company struggled to complete a few cars each month. An advantage in style came at the cost of falling behind in business reality. Then came the profit and loss equation, a cold number that history still repeats as a cautionary tale. The Muntz Jet sold for $5,500, as expensive as a small suburban house at the time. Yet its actual production cost was nearly $6,500, meaning that every time a customer eagerly took the Jet's keys and walked out of the showroom, Earl Muntz lost about $1,000 of his own money. It wasn't a pricing mistake, it was an internal economic structure beyond saving. Even more ironic, the Jet wasn't unsellable. It attracted the wealthy, the artists, the people who wanted a car unlike anything else. But the more customers it had, the harsher the truth became. The more it sold, the faster Muntz died. A business model that ran counter to every survival rule of the industry. Muntz once hoped this was only an early phase. He believed that if production increased, costs would drop, or that if enough people drove jets on the streets, the Muntz brand would become iconic, thereby promoting the TV and radio business he was expanding. But that miracle never came. Hand-built production could not accelerate, and his personal funds were not infinite. By 1954, as unpaid bills piled up and suppliers began to turn away, Muntz was forced to sign the company's obituary. The total number of jets created was only around 198 units, though many later documents state 394. But to historians, 198 is the truth, and it reflects exactly what the jet was: a masterpiece too beautiful to live long, too expensive to survive, and too rebellious to blend into the harsh machinery of business. Even though Muntz Car Company closed after only 4 short years, the legacy it left behind was far larger than the 198 cars that ever touched the road. The Muntz Jet was not designed to live long. It was created to open a path, to test ideas Detroit wouldn't dare attempt for many years. From the jet, the concept of the personal luxury car began to take shape, a class of vehicles built for comfort, style, and personal expression, rather than pure performance. Before the Ford Thunderbird, before the Riviera, or the Mark series, a TV salesman had already seen this road. But the jet's influence didn't end there. In the process of creating a car quiet enough to enjoy music on the highway, Earl Muntz conceived the idea of an in-car audio system. From that, the Muntz Stereo Pack was born, the first 4-track tape system, the predecessor of the cassette, and the entire automotive audio industry that followed. An invisible legacy, yet one that outlived any jet still remaining. Today, a restored Muntz Jet can reach prices from $100,000 to $200,000. Not because of performance, but because of the story behind it, a story of boldness, recklessness, and the fragile beauty of a dream that stretched beyond the limits of business. In the end, Muntz Car Company proves that sometimes death doesn't come from technical failure, but from daring to dream too big in a world too practical. Passion or mistake? Perhaps both. But one thing is certain: it was one of the most stylish acts of financial suicide the American automotive industry ever witnessed. If the story of the Muntz Jet moved you, even just a little, give this video a like so the algorithm knows that forgotten legends still deserve to be brought back to life. And if you have ever seen, touched, or even driven a jet or any unique car from the 1950s, share your story in the comments. Those memories are the fuel that helps the channel continue tracing the footsteps of machines buried by history. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next journey, because somewhere out there, many more cars are still waiting to be told the right way. See you again.